If you're in America illegally, maybe don't brag about it to your 1.3 million followers. We're going to talk about the latest wild saga involving a prominent influencer who might have gotten himself deported and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our politics, and our media, all from an independent perspective. Up first, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about somebody named Derek Guy. He's known as the Menswear guy on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now. But anyway, he's built up a huge social media following by sometimes very harshly reviewing public figures' menswear, like their suits, their ties, that kind of thing. He's been pretty big to the point where he's even been featured by major media outlets like Politico, and he has over 1.3 million followers on X, his biggest platform. But he decided to use that platform in a way that, well, interesting, I have to give him credit, was not advisable and may fall into the category of playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes. Because as anybody who's awake, right, as anybody who hasn't been hibernating for the last year knows, President Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, ran on a pretty explicit promise of mass deportation, of deporting all illegal immigrants. Not just some, not giving amnesty to some, right? What was traditionally the more moderate Republican position, deporting them all. They said it over and over and over again. Well, Derek Guy, aka the Menswear guy, decided to use his platform to openly talk about the fact that he's an illegal immigrant? Yeah, seriously. That's what he did in a post on X that we'll read. I debated whether to share my story on here, but I guess I will. He wrote, I think there's an idea out there that millions of violent criminals are pouring across the border, carrying machetes and drugs, looking to harm Americans. Certainly, while some people fall into that category, the vast majority of undocumented immigrants don't. Here's where it gets personal and why the thread went mega viral very quickly and was quickly noticed by the Trump administration. The Menswear guy wrote, my family escaped Vietnam after the Tet Offensive and went through an arduous journey that eventually landed them in Canada. My father worked there for a time as a janitor, my mother a secretary. When work fell through, my dad was offered to work with his sister in the United States, so he went as our family needed money. He ended up staying in the US longer than he was supposed to, not knowing immigration laws, and asked my mom to come to be with him. Of course, she went and carried me over the border while I was still a baby. So this sounds like a pretty classic case of some types of illegal immigration, a visa overstay, where someone comes here legally, it sounds like his father did, and then stays past the expiration of their authority to work. And then it sounds like his mother came to the country without permission, so illegally immigrated, and brought him as a very young child, which is something we've talked about in the illegal immigration debate for the so-called dreamers, the people who were brought here when they were very young, have only lived in America, and they're typically one of the groups that even, immigration hawks are open to giving some kind of legal status to, rather than deporting them back to a country they barely ever even knew. His thread continues, I'm still unsure whether we technically broke an immigration law. The border between Canada and the United States was pretty porous, as it is today for the most part. Side note, I'm pretty sure he broke an immigration law, or at least his parents did. I don't know if a 2-year-old can break laws. But either way, since I came here without legal documentation, I eventually fell into the category of being an undocumented immigrant. Yet, I've been in the United States since I was a baby. My identity and roots are very much based in this country, no different from anyone else. So, he just confessed to being an illegal immigrant to 1.3 million people on Twitter, and then told his story as part of this subgroup that a lot of people think should receive some form of amnesty to try to explain that not all illegal immigrants are what you see talked about on Fox News. There are millions of people in my situation, he wrote, people who were brought here as children, some babies, and were unable to raise their hand during this process and say, maybe we should hire a lawyer. Parents may have crossed the border not knowing about the law, as the law can be pretty confusing and lawyers are expensive. Perhaps, in the end, they should have hired a lawyer, but sometimes life is messy. In the end, they cross for the same reason many people rise every day, to support their families. So we're going to get into more of this, and then the response that's already coming from Trump's team after this. Guys, I've had threats sent to my home before, so I understand better than anyone how important it is to get your personal information off the internet. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. If you've ever wondered how spammers get your phone number or why your email inbox is flooded with spam, well, here's why. There are companies called data brokers that sell your data. They do it without your consent, and they make millions selling it to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers. And while they're legally required to move your information if you ask, they make the process confusing and hard on purpose. That's why I recommend today's sponsor, Aura, to my family and friends. They take care of the hard part, automatically removing your information from all of these sites and keeping it off. I use Aura to get my address taken off the internet so it's harder for haters to harass me and to decrease the endless robocalls and spam emails. And you can too. Plus, if anything does happen, Aura includes $5 million in identity theft insurance protection, and they have US fraud experts ready to help 24/7. Try Aura for 14 days for free at aura.com/Polumbo. In those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being sold. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. Okay, so the Menswear guy, this viral and well-known Twitter account, is just, like he said, one of millions of young people that Democrats and other immigration supporters will tout as examples of the kinds of people who are technically illegal immigrants, but really didn't do a lot wrong. They couldn't help it, that they were brought here as children and shouldn't be deported in most people's minds because America's really their country, even though they technically weren't born as citizens. They were raised their whole life here, and they're not harming anyone by being here. They're contributing to society, and yet the Trump administration is seeking to deport some of these people. So Democrats and opponents of the Trump administration's immigration agenda are highlighting people like this and others like him in press conferences and congressional testimony. Here's another example.
I'm Aiden, a college student studying computer engineering and also a DACA recipient. I've lived my entire life here in the DMV. I came to the U.S. when I was around 2 years old. I have known no other country except America as my home.
Now, the Menswear guy connected his personal story to a broader argument about immigration. Here's what he wrote. I think it's unreasonable to deport millions of people who have contributed positively to society. It's simply not true that the majority of these people are violent criminals carrying drugs. Many own small businesses. Many work as skilled laborers, including garment workers. The vast majority are good, honest people. For those of us who grew up in the United States, sending us back to our home country would mean sending someone to a foreign land, as they grew up in the United States. Tearing families apart based on immigration status seems inhumane. Ultimately, I hope me sharing this story helps push back against the idea that all undocumented immigrants are MS-13 members. I know many people in my position, and they are all like your neighbors. So, listen, on one hand, I am compelled by this man's story because I have always supported some form of legal status or amnesty for people in his situation, the dreamers. I want to secure the border. I want to deport illegal immigrants who come here and commit crimes. So I support deporting several million people. But I think the ones who remain, and we need to stop the flow. So we need to seal the border, secure the border, so this problem doesn't continue to accrue. But I think we should have compassion and some sympathy and empathy for people like him who came here as kids. I think they should be given some form of legal status, not deported to a country they barely even knew about. And that's not the Trump administration's position. Their position is to deport everyone. They've been very explicit about it. So, on one hand, I'm sympathetic to the arguments he's raising here. The other part of me, though, is like, listen, how stupid are you? This is so dumb. You just put a target on your back to millions of people. This administration is monitoring Twitter. They're obsessed with Twitter. They're hyper online. We have the most online vice president of the United States ever in J.D. Vance. And that's not a criticism or praise. That's just an observation. He stays up with the news. He's a big user of X. He follows memes and internet drama. And he, of course, was immediately told about this situation. Someone quote tweeted this news and said, J.D. Vance, I know you're reading this and you have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. To which he replied, a gif, I don't know if it's from a movie or something, of a man like smiling with a sinister look. Meanwhile, the official X account for the Department of Homeland Security, DHS Gov, shared this news and put a Spy Kids meme suggesting that they are on the case. Side note, I don't like this thing where official accounts for government agencies are posting memes. Call me a crabby old boomer if you want, but I don't like this. The menswear guy responded to all this by taunting JD Vance. In a tweet, he put 2 images of JD Vance in formal wear and said, "I think I can outrun you in these clothes." He might go down as the dumbest influencer of all time, just in terms of like self-preservation or basic instincts. They're gonna deport him. I can just tell you right now, I am quite confident that this will happen. I could be wrong. ICE is going to roll up on this man. It won't be hard to find him and send him back to Canada, where he can taunt JD Vance about his menswear from a country he's never lived in. And so I'm of 2 minds of this, because I'm a big believer in the principles of FAFO, right? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So I don't have a ton of sympathy for him in this particular situation as an individual if he gets deported, because you bragged about it online and taunted the Trump administration officials. Like, I have a lot of sympathy for people in his situation broadly, and I think we need to reach some kind of compromise or middle ground solution. But him in particular, I'm struggling to feel too bad for him if ICE rolls up on him after all of this. And I will just never cease to be amazed by how stupid some people can be and how much they value getting attention or getting noticed online or getting their message out there at any cost. Like, I'm not sure he's going to feel after this happens that it was worth it. While his story is interesting, it's not exactly unique. I played a video of someone else. Like, there are tons of people out there telling the dreamer story of the people brought here illegally, super young. They did nothing wrong. It just was done to them by their parents. They should be allowed to stay. Lots of people can make that sympathetic case publicly. So he didn't add a ton by doing it, but he did put a massive target on his back, and I think they're going to come after him. But what do you think? Can you believe influencers do stuff like this? Let me know in the comments. Do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button. And guys, make sure you subscribe to my second channel where I'm uploading exclusive bonus content you won't find on this main channel, like interviews, like reacting to cringe X-rated Instagram reels, and just topics of the day that I feel like yapping about, but don't want to dedicate a segment to on the podcast. All of that's over on my second channel, linked in the description, so go subscribe. Remember to send in your voice notes for my Voicemail Friday episodes, where I hear from you guys and listen to your woke horror stories and your personal life dilemmas and give you my thoughts and my advice. The link to send in one of those voice notes is in the description. We've also got merch items, the Your Delulu is Showing line and the On My Last Brain Cell merch. All of that linked in the description. Check it out as well. And now, more stupidity to discuss, because it's a day that ends in Y. I've got to show you guys a clip from a congressional hearing involving a Democratic member of Congress speaking to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is a Trump official, obviously. And she pulled something that was such a terrible example of just like the worst kind of woke, cringe identity victim politics that, honestly, this made me roll my eyes so hard I gave myself a headache. Take a listen.
In fact, we've already seen that prices are rising on many everyday goods.
Congresswoman,
please don't interrupt me.
We had
the time is mine. The time is mine. Please don't interrupt me. I will ask you questions and I will grant you an opportunity to answer them, but please don't interrupt me during my time.
With pleasure.
Okay, I know I'm a woman, but please try to limit yourself to answering my questions. No, I'm sorry, but we get talked over all the time, and I don't want that to happen at this hearing.
You have got to be kidding me. So they're having a dispute here, which is, have prices gone up a lot under Trump so far? And the truth is, the answer is factually no, not really. The Consumer Price Index, which measures inflation, is pretty low so far under Trump. Now, maybe some prices could get higher as some of the tariff effects start to happen, but that's not the point of this clip. The invocation of, I'm a woman, don't interrupt me, is so obnoxious in this particular case. And that's not to say that there's not some truth to the idea that women are interrupted by men and talked over a lot in life in general. I think there is some truth to that, and men should be more cognizant of it. But I'm sorry. Let's be so for real. If you watch congressional hearings, and I've been a political reporter since like 2018, so if you've watched hundreds of hours of this stuff, like I have, you know, they always interrupt each other. Male, female witnesses, men, members of Congress, women, members of Congress, they interrupt each other and they argue with each other and they are rude and they're not particularly civil. And in his case, he was interrupting, but he wasn't being incivil. He was just, being assertive and trying to correct a record and make his point. So you're not this victim of like a sexist verbal microaggression or whatever if you're being treated exactly the same way male members of Congress are treated. Okay? So spare the victim script. And I love that the room literally booed her and was like, oh, because this is exhausting. And the American people are sick of it. They're sick of the identity victim crap from Democrats. It's not working and it's not going to work. But keep it up if you enjoy losing. There was another exchange between Scott Bessent and another female Democratic member of Congress. And this one ended up going completely off the rails into truly unhinged territory. Here's that clip.
We have seen since January 20th that the stock market overall has gone down 1.3%, and gas has gone up.
Ma'am, that's incorrect.
Excuse me. Let me get something straight with you first here. I've seen you interrupt everyone. When you come to someone's house, you respect their rules. And in this house, we don't interrupt individuals. And you're not going to interrupt my time. I'm going to give you time to respond. You may want to jot down some notes about things that you don't agree with me on so that you can respond to them at that time. But while I'm speaking, as the person holding this time, you will refrain from speaking, sir, until I am done.
I look forward to
until I am
responding.
done, and then I will give you time to speak, okay?
Look forward to the facts.
Thank you. I'll look forward to your response, whether they're factual or incorrect either.
This is just laughable to me. In this house, we don't interrupt people. Girl, in what house? In the House of Representatives? Have you never been to a congressional hearing before? Because they interrupt people all the time. And when she says, I'll give you time to answer the questions, well, in fairness to Scott Bessent, he probably anticipates not being given much time to respond to any of it because they're usually not. These congressional hearings usually go like this. The member reads a bunch of facts or statistics, asks a question, the person speaks for like 3 seconds, then they cut them off and they go, I'm reclaiming my time, and then they move to their next point and they don't let them speak. So it is totally understandable that he would feel the need to interject to make his points because they're often not given time to respond. And in this very hearing, that had happened to him many times before this. So it's not a victim thing. And the idea that, oh, this is our house. First off, ma'am, it is the taxpayer's house. We pay for it. You don't. So you work for us. So check the attitude a little bit. But also, in this house, it is extremely normal to interrupt people. So you just come off as incredibly obnoxious and condescending in this clip, at least to me. But the really unhinged part of this came on Twitter after the fact. Some anonymous MAGA account tweeted something contemptible. He tweeted, do all these TWATS have their PMS cycle synced? Someone needs to ship a case of Midol to the Capitol this afternoon. So this is a very rude and ignorant thing to say, but it's just some anonymous Twitter account. So welcome to X, I guess. What I was not expecting was for Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, the Democrat from this exchange, to respond to this at all, let alone in this incredibly unhinged manner. She wrote, excuse you, this TWAT, and she just wrote the word, and she also wrote a much worse word, CUNT, poom, I don't even know what that means. Whatever you want to call it represents an organ that gives life and is resilierner, RESILIENR. I don't think that's a word, so thanks for the compliment. I can take one interruption, but Bessent was out of control. And I know I look good for my age, but baby, I'm postmenopausal and it still works. Cherry emoji, water emoji. What the actual heck is going on in the United States Congress? We need a complete and total shutdown of Washington, D.C. and local Twitter access until we can figure out what the heck is going on, because this is a diabolical thing for a sitting member of Congress to tweet. What do you mean you're tweeting out calling yourself the C word? What do you mean you're talking about how it still works? Ma'am, no one asked. Why are you even responding to these anonymous random mega accounts in the first place? And how do you think any of this makes you or your side come off well? It does not. I am sick of giving free advice to the Democratic Party because the things that I say are so obvious, but they pay consultants millions of dollars and then they come up with this. And then they wonder why they constantly lose and have an approval rating lower than the approval rating of many sexually transmitted diseases. But keep it up, y'all. You're doing amazing. Just, it's working out great. This exact approach is going over super well with most of the country, and your party is just in tip-top shape. It's really not, though. And that brings us to the next thing I want to bring up, which is something kind of related to the big, beautiful bill debate going on in Congress right now, which is Democrats, in particular, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar, are criticizing GOP proposals to make pretty modest cuts to the SNAP program. That is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, what's colloquially known as food stamps. And the cuts that they're proposing are just a modest expansion of work or volunteering requirements associated with the program and requiring states to pick up some more of the funding rather than the federal government, to the tune of shaving a couple $100 billion off this massive program over the next decade. Well, Democrats, as they are, anytime anyone tries to cut anything from the federal government's budget, even though we are massively in debt and going bankrupt, they are pulling at the heartstrings with a sob story, but not one that they thought out, to say the very least. Watch this clip from a Senate hearing where and I don't say this to be mean, it is relevant, rather rotund woman speaks about the need for SNAP programs, even though there's no reason to believe her benefits would be cut under this proposal. Take a listen to this clip that Amy Klobuchar shared on X with the caption, "This is who Republicans in Congress are trying to take food away from." Listen to her story. Yes, let's listen.
I am a single mom of 4 who are ages 21, 17, 12, and 11. I would like to tell you my story on how SNAP benefit has helped me. Sorry.
Go ahead. You're doing good.
When I had my oldest daughter 21 years ago, I was working 3 jobs. One job alone, I had to pay childcare. Another one to pay food, which wasn't enough, and one to pay the bills, and I still struggled a lot. Moving forward, I am now working a full-time job as a bus monitor, and I'm a driver who transports students to specialized schools in Kansas City. As an employee of the school district, I only get paid once a month. By the time I get my bills paid, I have nothing left to pay for food and other basic needs. If it wasn't for SNAP benefits, I wouldn't be able to feed my children or myself. I work, pay my bills, and like every other mom, I want to be sure that I have enough food to put on the table.
So listen, my heart goes out to this woman. She's clearly struggled in life, and I don't want anyone to bully her or make fun of her in the comments. But you have to, as Democrats or Republicans, as people in Congress, think about the optics of the people you're having testify. Because when you cut up these clips and they go viral, people will be mean. And putting up somebody, I'm just saying this not to insult or demean her, just to point out a fact, who is objectively extremely morbidly obese, as the poster child of why we can't possibly slightly trim taxpayer-funded free food programs, isn't going to go over well on social media. And it's not going to be fair to that woman to be mocked because you tried to weaponize her story to attack Republicans in what's a fundamentally pretty dishonest way. The cuts are the cuts in the room with us. The modest cuts to SNAP that Republicans are proposing are probably going to be dialed back in the Senate, but even what's left will simply be enforcing work requirements And this woman, from her story, had 3 jobs when she was most relying on this program and still has a job today. So as long as she just provided proof, she wouldn't lose benefits. So what is the relevance? Why is she here? Why is she testifying other than as emotional blackmail and manipulation? And also, I'm sorry, but like the fact that she has a 21-year-old child is so irrelevant. I mean, maybe she's saying that once upon a time he was a kid and relied on food stamps, but like presumably she's still a current beneficiary. So her having grown adult children is not relevant to that. They're expected to take care of themselves as adults. Anyway, I think most people agree that we need to have some form of basic social safety net for people who truly can't take care of themselves or their kids. But there is no such thing as a free lunch or of 3 free lunches. And every time you're getting one of these programs or benefits, it is coming from your neighbor's paychecks who do not have a lot of money to spare. So it must be a last resort, and it must be reserved for people who truly need it. And expanding these work requirements, if that means millions of people will fall off of the program because they can't meet these very basic requirements, which I'll go over in a minute, are extremely easy to meet, then I don't think they needed it that bad in the first place. And I'm not going to feel that bad about it. I keep seeing all these scary statistics, right? About how millions of people will lose their SNAP benefits because of this. So I wanted to find the source of these claims, and I did find it. It's a liberal think tank, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. They have an analysis that they put out in May that the expanded work requirements in the House Republican bill would take away food stamps from millions, and then they have some estimates. They write, one of the harshest cuts would take food assistance away from people, including, for the first time ever, parents with children over the age of 6 and adults aged 55 to 64 who don't meet a red tape-laden and ineffective work requirement. Adults subject to the requirements would only be able to receive food benefits for 3 months in a 3-year period unless they show compliance with a 20-hour per week work requirement or prove that they qualify for an exemption, such as having a disability. I love that they can still get 3 months benefits even if they don't meet it, which surely is enough time to find a new job if you get laid off or come across hard times and get back on your feet and start paying your own bills. And guys, when we say work requirement, it's not just about having a job or being able to find a job. You can meet the work requirement by doing any of these things, working at least 80 hours a month, that's 20 hours a week, but work can be for pay, for goods or services, for something other than money, unpaid, or as a volunteer. You can also participate in a work program, at least 80 hours a month. A work program could be SNAP employment training or another federal, state, or local work program. You can participate in a combination of work and work hour programs for a total of at least 80 hours of a month. So the requirement doesn't require you to find a job. It doesn't require you to make a lot of money. It's like you can literally meet it by volunteering. They're just asking you to give back in some way. And frankly, I do not think that is too much to ask. And I'm sick of these examples, like the clip we played, being used to weaponize anybody who wants to right our fiscal house by making even modest cuts to any program. But what do you guys think? Do you sympathize with the woman that Amy Klobuchar put on display? Do let me know in the comments. Please be kind and respectful. Do not make fun of her. I don't want to see that in my comment section. And one final thing. We have to talk about this quickly because this is just beyond parody. The Washington Post put out a headline that is laughable and reads like something directly transported out of a time capsule from 2020. Headline, here are the people Trump doesn't want to exist. Women, people of color, and those in the LGBTQ plus community are main targets. Then there's a little image with drawings or cartoons of all the different people. You've got the dude with the ugly gay sweater, you've got a woman with a hijab, and old white people, I guess. I don't understand what the heck is going on in this little graphic. Anyway, the Washington Post reports, when the Trump administration encounters a group it doesn't respect or care for, oftentimes it just deletes them, specifically the very record of their existence. Y'all, democracy dies in darkness. That's the slogan of the Washington Post. How about democracy dies in Delulu? Because gay people have not been erased. Trans people have not been deleted. people of color and women are not being erased. In fact, Trump put many of these people in his freaking cabinet. The journalist T. Beckett Adams pointed out the secretaries of state and labor are Latinos, the HUD secretary is black, the DNI is a female Pacific Islander, the Treasury secretary is gay, the education, agricultural, and DHS secretaries are women, as is the AG, chief of staff, and head of small business, and that's just the cabinet. So this is absurd. Y'all sound deranged, and it doesn't help you. I mean, there are valid criticisms to make on some of the DEI or anti-DEI stuff maybe going too far, some of Trump's, rhetoric about different groups of people. But when you put out this deranged slop, it totally undercuts any legitimate criticisms you might have. And their only evidence for this, Trump erasing and deleting entire demographics of people, is basically them taking down a bunch of DEI related web pages from federal government websites. They write, for example, when the Defense Department was asked to cull all DEI related content from its websites, it removed approximately 26,000 images. A list of the deleted photos was given to the Associated Press. About 19,000 of them included descriptions, and our analysis found that 4 out of 5 depicted women, people in the LGBTQ plus community, and racial minorities. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. They took down the DEI stuff. Of course, it wasn't going to be a bunch of smiling straight white men. And it doesn't mean there's not plenty of images left that aren't explicitly on DEI pages showing all sorts of people serving in the military and in different capacities in the federal government. There are. And this idea that these couple thousand of web pages on different federal government websites are somehow if you take those down, these people are erased or deleted from society is just absurd. I have to read you this last one quote from the Washington Post. This is part of a broader campaign to delete the statistical and visual evidence of undesirables, or at least those who may not fit into President Donald Trump's conception of the new American golden age. Entire demographics are being scrubbed from records of both America's past and present, including people of color, transgender people, women, immigrants, and people with disabilities. They are now among America's missing persons. You have got to be kidding me. That is so absurd. This idea that any of these groups of people are missing persons now because they took down a couple thousand web pages of DEI stuff. I mean, maybe you can find examples of things they took down that shouldn't have been taken down. I'm totally open to that. But the idea that it means that women are now missing in America, that people of color have now been erased from America, is laughable. It is absurd. And it's actually also very offensive to the families of people who actually have gone missing, have been abducted, who truly have been removed from life or from America through, horrific crimes or other tragedies that have happened. You're making a mockery of it with this absurd, woke nonsense. And then you wonder why people don't take the mainstream media seriously. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go and comment with your thoughts. I do take the time to read the comments. Remember to send in your voice notes, check out the merch, subscribe to the second channel, yada, yada, yada. And with that, we'll talk again real soon.